wanted to give you some insight on why we screen our athletes' feet and how we help them pick footwear. So I'm going to use myself as an example here. I have some relatively flat feet. We'd call them functional flat feet. My feet try to reach the middle part of my foot tries to reach for the ground when I'm walking or squatting or running. So I'm a pretty good example of why we screen our feet and why we choose different footwears. This is something that you can carry over and do yourself very quickly. Feel free to email me more questions if you have some. Very simply, you're going to look at my right foot in all of these videos. So if you look at my right foot, right at the Achilles, we actually look and try to see what angle we have for the Achilles. In an ideal world, we're going to see straight vertical up and down. As you can see, my Achilles kind of shoots off to the side right here, and you can see my little pinky toe hanging off the side there. So that means that my foot is actually not straight when I'm making contact with the ground. This is not an uncommon thing, and I'm going to be showing you videos of me walking at 2.5 miles per hour, so not very fast, but also I can't fake it. So you're gonna see me moving through here. That toe is gonna swing off to the side, and I will play that again and pause it again. So as we go through nice and slowly, you're gonna see my foot grab the ground. It's already pointing off to the side. We can make arguments that some of this is coming from my hip, which it probably is, and absolutely is. And we can also make some arguments that's coming from my foot. For this topic alone, I just want to talk about the feet and looking at this foot here. So you see me make contact with the ground, pointing off to the side. And as we come through the other swing side of my leg, you can really see the pronounced medial malleolus is shooting off to the middle part of my foot, getting a big stretch in that Achilles, and that toe is off to the side. And you're going to see that I'm not very straight there with that foot. Again, these aren't the worst things in the world, but we can always optimize this and make it a little bit more efficient, a little bit better. So if you throw a pair of shoes on me, these are some New Balances here. These New Balances are not very supportive. They are not my favorite shoe to be wearing around. I try actually not to use them, and you'll see why momentarily, because there's a lot of give in that midfoot. So we already talked about how my foot is kind of flat, a little bit sloppy, we'll call it, just doesn't have a great arch on an ongoing basis. If you look over here, we still have that Achilles is kind of pointing off to the side. You can see that my toe is off to the side a little bit. You can kind of see that pinky toe. And let's look at my gait here. So looking at that right foot, I hit the ground, a little bit more neutral than the barefoot version, but not perfectly straight. Again, not perfect, but we want it to be as close to perfect as possible, because this is going to be illuminated even more when we start lunging, when we start sprinting, when we start moving, lateral speed, all things like that, even squatting, which you'll see momentarily. So not a terrible position, but definitely not a good one. As we get through my gait, I am really quick to get my heel off the ground. I don't like to be on the ground there. My toe is going to start to spin out a little bit, and you're going to, as you can see, and we talked about my Achilles right here, is kind of shooting off to the side still. Big stretch on that. Not a big deal, but it's not ideal. So look at my medial malleolus there, that middle part of my ankle. Big shift on the middle. Not as big as over here, but still pretty pronounced. And we'll look at the next step. Very pronounced right there. My heel gets off the ground very quickly. And then let's look at another pair of, so those were New Balances. These are some Asics that I move pretty well in. You're going to see that in this position, my Achilles is very straight. I got some good medial support on this shoe. You can barely see my pinky on the side. We would call this neutral position on my foot. Really, really good post up on the middle part of my foot. My midfoot support is solid there, so I actually can have really good position of my shin bone, which is going to dictate how my femur moves. It's going to dictate how my hip moves, which is going to dictate how my back moves. So all this stuff is connected very simply by me changing my footwear. We can see that my Achilles is in a better spot, and everything else is going straight. So let's look at how I move there. Heel stays on the ground really long compared to the other one. If you look at how long my heel's on the ground. Almost touching the ground with my left foot before my heel even starts to pivot off the ground. Really neutral. You can still see I kind of pivot off to the side. That right side starts to shoot a little bit. But it's not bad. Landing. Again, spin off to the side just a little bit, but nowhere near what we have here, and definitely not what we have here. You can see those almost the middle part of my toes over here. So as we come back, come all the way through, and let's look at one more. Again, this is not perfect. You can still see that medial malleolus is shifting to the middle when I'm posted up completely over that hip or under that hip, but it's exponentially better than it was on the barefoot where I had no medial support on that shoe. So again, this is a quick fix and a good one if we're going to be training and moving and we want to kind of have a shortcut to get there. And we're going to look at some actual movement stuff. So I'm going to keep them in order again, and we're going to look at me squatting barefoot. I obviously have some issues here that you will see highlighted as we get going. So barefoot, let's look at those ankles. First of all, left foot's shot off to the side, right foot's a little bit more straight, still the toes are off to the side a little bit. I am not a great squatter, as you will see, not without corrective footwear. But let's go right through. Let's look what happens. You could see the middle part of my foot kind of turns to mush when I get into the ground. We're still looking at that right foot. And immediately what happens? Those toes spin out just a little bit. And then when I come back up, my toes want to spin back in. I almost fall. My toes can't even grab the ground there. And look at that. Hips can barely break parallel. My feet are spinning off to the side. Achilles is starting to shoot in. My medial malleolus, this is going to be under exaggerated here, is really shooting in. This is a very uncomfortable position for me. Same thing going on with this foot. Really no midfoot support at all. My body does not know how to work in time and space without any support here. Now let's look at these New Balances that don't give me a ton of support. These are very similar to like Nike Frees, which we see a lot of our athletes coming in with. So I get myself set and watch what happens to my ankles. Oh, come on. Here we go. So you can see it very pronounced on my left side. Ankle shifts in, heel pops up off the ground. That is not good. Same thing's happening over here. Not a good position. Not powerful, not generating any force, not absorbing force very well. This is not good. This is a nice indicator of a precursor before some ACL stuff. I make sure that when I'm running around, playing, doing different things, I'm wearing the proper footwear. This is a pair of shoes I probably won't be wearing much at all. There's no support there. It's not good feedback to my brain or to my body. You can see how ugly that squat is. It's actually very similar, almost identical to the one to the left here. Maybe slightly better, but you can even see that heel really wants to pop up, as you can see right there. And now let's get into the better footwear. That pair of Asics that we have. Keeping looking at that right foot. Look at how neutral that foot is, nice and straight. Achilles is almost vertical there. Not perfect, but definitely close enough. I'm over-exaggerating my squatting position for this demonstration. Normally we have our athletes, including myself, externally rotate our feet a little bit more, so we externally rotate that femur, get into a better squat position. But I try to keep nice straight toes for our assessment so we can actually see what's going on. And you'll see that I can get a little bit deeper in the squat and a little bit more vertical torso. My Achilles on both sides is much better positioned. Still not perfect. Definitely the left side is going to pop in a little bit. The right side does not like this position perfectly, but it's definitely better. You can still see that toes popping off to the side just a little bit. Not bad though. This would be acceptable for me. I would actually be, willing to train through this area. But then I'm also going to give you the last piece here, which for me is using some Olympic shoes. Big heel lift, real solid base. Midfoot support is incredible in those trainers. Those Olympic shoes are really meant to help you squat and get better depth by giving you that ankle mobility and foot stability. we have arguments back and forth and debates on, do I have an ankle mobility issue? Do I have a hip issue? Is it a midfoot support issue? It's probably all of the above. I could probably use a little bit more ankle mobility, a little bit more foot stability would be huge, as you will see, and then a little bit better positions on the hip that allow me to sink in. But they all play together, and you're going to see how much better this squat looks than all the other ones. Look at the depth. That tibia and that shin bone is nice and straight. We actually get into, in this squat pattern, that Achilles is going to be into that medial shift a little bit. You're going to see that it does not run perfectly straight up and down because I'm driving external rotation from my femur and my hip. This is much, much better than any of these positions over here. This is why when I squat, I get that medial foot support. It does not need, Olympic lifting shoes are not needed for everybody. I just know that with my squat pattern, I do a lot better. I don't train the squat a ton because my squat pattern is so poor and I do have some hip and ankle stuff going on that I'm always working through. I do much better with lunge variations, deadlift variations, things like that. That's why we screen our athletes. That's why we change the protocols depending on how they move and what they need. But as you can see, if it's someone that we do need to get squatting right away, and we can make big adjustments very quickly by giving them footwear that is more optimal than not. As I said before, I would not want my athlete squatting with these kind of shoes or barefoot here. But in these two last videos, you're going to see that my position is pretty good and I can get away with a pretty decent squat without having to change a lot of mechanical stuff. We look at how to do that with cleats. Everybody has a little bit better footing with different kind of cleats. So we make sure we screen some of our athletes that want to be looked at with their cleats on. Sometimes people need an orthotic. Sometimes you need a custom one. Sometimes you need just an over-the-counter, which we see a really good results with some over-the-counter orthotics. Everybody's different. That's why we screen our foot. There's whole courses that I've taken on looking at the foot. Spend 20 hours figuring out exactly how to mold things and cast things properly, and also look at how that foot drives the rest of the body. That is not needed on most of our athletes. We really just find the least common denominator, figure out how to get them moving better, and also figure out what kind of footwear is going to be more optimal for them. You're going to buy shoes, might as well pick a pair that is going to help you move better. My general guideline is that when you go to get shoes, try on a couple pairs that you like, both for style and feel, and then take some videos of you squatting and take some videos of you walking, and then do your own little assessment. You don't need to use us all the time to figure out what kind of footwear is going to help you the most. You can be the judge and see what happens there. If you'd like me to screen it, feel free to shoot me some emails. Happy to look at it for you.